Yes, I mean, it's been an incredible journey. Like 14 years ago, it was 1998 when I was, confused and frightened and concerned about what was going on in the world. I didn't understand the starvation, the killing of innocent people, the violence in the home, in the community, in the school. I mean, trying to make sense of everything, for me, was particularly, I found it really difficult. I mean, why are we behaving the way that we are? And all of those things led me to want to try and do something. I mean, I've got no qualifications. I mean, actually, I've got a D in pottery, but that wasn't going to get me too far, and I was dyslexic, and I was bottom of the class, and I was fairly humiliated, and all that sort of stuff was going on, and we've been hearing a lot about education and getting young people to be thinking positively, and beautiful talks, and all of those themes seem to go back to young people. It's very, very interesting, isn't it? But anyway, so that's where it all began for me, and I didn't know what to do, and the film camera, as you've just seen, was all I had, and I thought, okay, I'll make a film about peace, and I'll go out there in the world, and I'll talk to men and women, rich and poor from all over the world, and I'll ask them how they've made sense of everything, and therefore, as a filmmaker, I could then show people that film, and maybe it would ask some questions for them. It would answer some questions for them, because if I learned through the film, then they would learn. And I realized that a film about a series of sound bites in itself was kind of interesting, but it wasn't enough. There needed to be a journey. There needed to be a mountain to climb. There needed to be something, some kind of path, some kind of structure. I knew that from having been an actor. And that was when I started to think about, well, where is the starting point for peace? Where's the starting point for the film? Where's the starting point for peace? And then that's when I realized that there wasn't one. There wasn't a day of global unity. There wasn't a day of intercultural cooperation. There wasn't a day separate from politics and religion when the world could come together as one and unite in the hope that we would lift the level of consciousness around the fundamental issues that humanity faces. And that absolutely fascinated me, that day didn't exist. And then, of course, you saw those images, traveling the world and meeting everybody and being with Kofi Annan and the Dalai Lama and Nelson Mandela and Amre Musa and Shimon Peres and whoever it was. And they were all just building this. They were all saying it made sense. They were all saying it was going to work. And of course, you saw, the world voted for the day and it was created, and that was incredible. And then hearing the cynic say, when that day was created, why we did Afghanistan was so much about the cynic. I was so concerned, I was so frightened that actually these people in areas of conflict, these amazing thinkers, had told us that the day would make sense and that it was a window of opportunity, but then when it was created, people didn't believe in it. And that was really worrying. For me, cynicism kills people because it stops you from having a go. I don't think the cynic should feel bad, and I don't think we should ridicule, humiliate, and kind of be nasty about that. But cynicism kills people. And obviously that's why we continued that journey and went into Afghanistan, and you saw those images working. And that for me was like the end of stage 2. So I've sort of seen this thing, and we're into the final phase now. What I'm going to show you is a presentation that I sort of make most days to kind of engage people, to enroll people, to kind of get to the sort of numbers. And then there's, of course, people like Tony who have heard about the day. We don't have a connection. It's his day, it's your day, it's everybody's days, and it's just off, and he's doing it. It has nothing to do with us, and that's what it's all about. Like Rosa Parks, when she had the idea for Mother's Day in 1908. She has this idea for Mother's Day. I give my mum flowers on Mother's Day, but I don't know about Rosa Parks. I'm not thinking about Rosa Parks. I'm just thinking about my mum, and that's all that's important. And actually, there's behavioural change around that because I'm really polite on Mother's Day. And that behavioural change in a moment is going to become really interesting because I walk in, I give her the flowers, everything's sweet, we have a beautiful time, and then I leave and it's cool. And most of us do that, and that's behavioural change, and it's a really, really interesting thing to me now. And so this sort of final phase, like phase 3. So phase 1, creating the day. Phase 2 was proving that it could work. And phase 3 is the institutionalization of it, making it self-sustaining, letting it go, it being the world's day, it being your day. That's all it's about. And in many ways, we'll just sort of see it all happen, and it'll be a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that's totally, really what's happening now. So this is the final phase to me, the institutionalization of Peace Day. And we've been working with this company called McKinsey & Company, and many of you will know that company, and many of you might have been in with those meetings with McKinsey & Company, and I don't know what kind of experience you had, but for me, the experience being in those meetings is just mind-blowing, because I'm learning about the data. Like for me, climbing the mountain and me telling you there's a beautiful view is one thing. But me climbing the mountain and then showing you the picture of the view is another thing altogether. And at that point, you probably want to climb the mountain when you see the view. And so when you're talking about peace and the day and what it means and what's going to happen, if you can start to prove it and you can show the numbers, like properly prove the impact that the day has, a methodology of measurement, Well, then it goes into a whole nother sphere and it starts to really get traction, and it's a very, very exciting and beautiful thing to see. So McKinsey's is suggesting to us at the present speed of which this day, and Tony and his friends are all a part of that, and all of you who go to those events and have been celebrating in schools or whatever you've been doing, you're the reason why this is a success, and you're having an impact on people's lives, which we'll talk about in a second. So McKinsey's is saying at the present speed of this day, 3 billion people will be aware of it by 2016. That's an incredible number. And partly, obviously, that was the letter, actually, from the Mujahideen where they said that they would stop, and that was the press release saying there was a 70% decrease of violence in Afghanistan. That really was the sort of the springboard for things. But this is how we at Peace One Day are sort of trying to help the institutionalization. So there's a number of things that we'll do, and now many people are doing them, but we continue to do them. One Day, One Goal is a football campaign where people literally in every single country of the world, will be playing football, from the favelas of Brazil or into Somalia or the UK or wherever it is. Beautiful game, amazing way of embracing people. One Day, One Dance, the same. People dancing all over the world on the day, wearing their dresses, it doesn't cost anything. Set for Peace is a DJ. People doing, sets for peace on Peace Day night. The life-saving stuff, this is really, for me, the kind of the box, as it were. You saw in that film I was talking about coalitions, coalition building. It was quite interesting. When we were writing out to the world, to governments and intergovernments and non-governments, educations, unions, sports, faiths, whatever sector of society it was, we were seeing some growth. But when we built coalitions, i.e. you chose a lead partner like Scott Webber into Peace, who headed up the coalition of NGOs, or Baroness Scotland, who headed up the coalition of domestic violence organisations. By the way, that's the largest coalition in the world now, centred around Peace Day. Same with corporate, Paul Polman of Unilever, same with Faith, William Vendley, Religions for Peace. We built these coalitions, and you put a lead partner in place, and then they put a series of other people, and then it spreads out into the NGO community. So, for example, there were 26 international NGOs active on Peace Day in 2010. This year, there were 867 international NGOs active. I mean, it's mind-blowing. So the kind of letting go and making everything somebody else's is such a beautiful thing. Coalition building, is just where it's at. And the coalitions around domestic violence, because the greatest war is not with a gun, it's not about Afghanistan, it's in our homes, and it's in our communities, and it's in our schools, it's with a fist. That is where the real violence is happening. It's the war that humanity is facing is in relation to what's going on in our homes. And 1 in 3 women in their life is going to be injured. 1 in 3. That's what Peace Day is about. That it's not, it's about non-violence, it's about ceasefire, it's about what's going on in our homes, communities, and schools. So us bringing our families together, bringing our friends together, the impact that is having is unbelievable. And that is why you're seeing the leading domestic violence organisations being centred around this day to raise awareness, because awareness in itself means that a woman or a child might get a number which they wouldn't have got, and if they didn't get it, they might well be injured. It's really quite a beautiful thing. So anyway, life-saving education. Our materials are used now in 197 countries in the 6 official languages of the United Nations, giving young people the tools to be the driving force behind the vision of a united and sustainable world. That's what peace is about. That's where it's all going to change. It's what everybody's spoken about today. If we really are going to change things, then we have to give tools to young people to become peacemakers in their homes, their communities, and their schools. And the great thinkers will all tell you that, and you'll know that yourself. And we're really invested in that and really into it. Art plays a massive role. And it was wonderful to hear all the stuff about art that the gentleman was talking about. And we've teamed up with Damien Hirst and Anthony Gormley and Jake Chapman and Dinos Chapman, turning AK-47s into objects of art, and massive awareness all over the world through that. Social media plays a role. Annual celebrations, Elton John singing for us last year, and making movies, which we're always doing, produced by Jude. Those things inspire individual action. So that's what we're doing at Peace One Day. And this is the McKinsey data, which is amazing. So they're teaching me and showing me the kind of growth of the day. And I find it fascinating that, each of those big spikes is obviously a peace day, but in between, they're saying to us, listen, man, you've got to get these spikes up, because it's actually not about the day. It's about the 364 days before the day. And that's where young people, through their art and their poetry and their literature and whatever it might be, they're exploring their journey all the way through the year, which then gets to things like this. So in 2012, The McKinseys were saying, after they looked at all of the data, that there were 280 million people aware. But of that 280 million people, about 2% of the 280 million would have behaved more peacefully. So about 5.6 million people not being involved in violence. And how do you prove that? You prove it really simply. In every kind of, actually, in every kind of sector you can prove it. But what happens in a school is the school's observing the day, the children are doing amazing things, the teacher's got a starting point to be able to teach peace in the classroom, so they're absolutely loving it. Everybody's expressing themselves, they're thinking differently, and we get letters all the time saying, there was no bullying in my school. There was no bullying in my school that day because, of course, the children are thinking completely differently about each other. But they've spent months thinking like that. And that's what I was talking about, that behavioral change. This year, we said we'd try to hit 600 million. We already know that there were over 600 million people aware, well over, actually, and we'll publish those figures in December. It's very rapid, but the 4%, the number was increased because we're learning about the call to action. We're learning about how we're communicating. So the number of behavioral change goes up. So we think it's likely that it's close to 30 million people not being involved in violence just a couple of weeks ago in all kinds of sectors. These are astonishing, absolutely astonishing numbers that, of course, all of us, Tony included and his friends and those coalitions, can obviously, all be delighted that we've achieved it. To celebrate of all of that, this year we put a concert on that was 24 hours long, with incredible artists. This is the Peace Palace at The Hague. It's an amazing place. It's where the International Court of Justice is. They give a big peace prize. They very kindly gave it to us a couple of years ago and then asked if I would produce the 100-year celebration of the Peace Palace, which we did. That was broadcast live. We then did a concert in Medellin in Colombia, where we would do some incredible work, across the country, really, president being involved, very exciting stuff. And we made a brand new documentary, which you can see on the homepage, just a little update documentary which you can look at peaceoneday.org. We were live in all of these countries of the world, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. We came across the world speaking to men and women from all sectors of society about how they were utilizing the day, the kinds of things that were going on. It was beautiful, and it was an experiment for what we're going to try and do in 2014. We brought together these amazing actors who are choosing pieces of incredible text and then being interviewed about the text and their thoughts on peace, and the same with musicians who have performed with us in the past. So finally, not finally. Yeah, I'm not quite sure this is the best slide to have shown today, but and I didn't even see the talk. But anyway, how do we fund the process? What I don't do is what I'm not doing, and I'm even if I'd have seen the talk about Coke, do you know what? I'm really into the corporate sector. There's this guy who wrote a wonderful book called Mid-Course Correction, an incredible man. And I went to see him to say, look, should I be working with the corporate sector? Is it right to be in that room? And he was like, yeah, absolutely, it's right to be in that room. People who say you shouldn't be in that room are into revolution, not evolution. And I think this is a very interesting thing, that the men and women at the top of the corporate sector are exactly as we course, and many of you are from that sector, are exactly like you and me. They want to change the world. And there's no point in me standing on the outside and throwing stones and saying, yeah, we don't need you, and we don't need the trust that you have or the awareness that you can generate. We've got to work with those people. We've got to inspire them. We've got to empower them. We've got to work together. And out of that can come change, the kind of change that we want, the kind of change that you see in CSR. The reason why there's more peace on this planet now than there's ever been, if you look at what the academics are saying, is because they were saying because of the corporate sector, because of its investment into emerging markets, because of putting infrastructure and trade links and communications. That's why we're seeing incredible peace. And the corporate sector is absolutely, massively at the heart of that. Not because I say so, because I kind of feel like I know so, but I'm not saying to anybody they need to think the same way. I'm just saying that it's a fascinating area as to why we're changing. And I have hope. I have serious hope, which I didn't have 15 years ago about the world. And I'll tell you last thing. One of the things, funding this thing has been a hard slog. Can you imagine, I don't want to ask you for €5 or whatever it is. I just want you to do something and say sorry to your mum, or be with your family and in your schools. You have to find a model to do it, and creating that relationship with the corporate sector is how we did it, and I'm delighted we did it, because those people are doing great things in those sectors to help this process. But a wonderful thing happened to me where this guy, Howard Buffett, rang me up. Howard Buffett, he rang me up and he said, listen, I'd love to have dinner with you. And he'd seen some work that I'd been doing, and we sat down, in Switzerland. And he said, listen, could you do what you did in Afghanistan in the Democratic Republic of Congo? And I've been there. And I was like, yeah, I think I could, I think we could do that, but we'd need an amazing team. And he said, how long would it take? And I said, about 3 years. And he said, okay, that sounds about right, because that's what it takes, man. You want to make a serious difference, then of course, it's a long journey, isn't it? And that journey is beautiful anyway. I mean, every day is an amazing thing. And he said to me, how much would it cost? And I said, I don't know, around $10 million. And he said, I'll give you 10 million. And he did. And we're now on our way. So thank you very much. It's been an amazing thing to talk to you. Thank you.